The main reason we go away to places like the Lake District and such like is that it takes people out of those communities. We do that in the second week of our programme, which if you're familiar with the sort of the circle of life that says forming, norming, storming and performing, which is a teamwork sort of model. Generally when we work with young people in the first week, they're sort of rabbits in headlights and won't challenge each other and such. But by the time they get to know each other after the first week, they're then more prepared to challenge. I don't like him, I don't like her, why are you saying this and that? So we take them away from their local communities and do that in quite an isolated area. And the more isolated it is, the better really, because the young people we engage with tend to, not always, but when you get that point of conflict, that point, they'll have walked out of school. If they fell out with their teacher or fellow pupils, they will have walked out of college and disengaged in that activity. Well, if we do it in an isolated way, they can walk out, eventually they'll come back, because there ain't nowhere to go, and walking from Cumbria back to Lancashire is maybe not a good idea, but it's about getting people from different backgrounds, different age groups, different experiences to work together, and it's a right cocktail, and we provide them with those activities whilst we're there that challenge them, and sleep deprivation is part of that, because being excited and away and not sleeping and talking all night is not something that's just particular to 13-year-olds. I can assure you that 19, 21-year-olds and 24-year-olds do exactly the same. So by the time you get to the end of the week, they've tended to be quite challenging. But in that isolated way, we can manage that situation, put it all back together before we arrive back in their familiar surroundings. It's not an adventure holiday, because we've put a bit of canoeing or raft building in there and a bit of rock climbing in there. Yeah, they're personal challenges to a lot of young people, but they're just the vehicles we use to try and form that team. And we do self-catering and stuff like that, which is just as important as building a raft and going on the lake. But if you're going to take people to the Lake District, it'd be a crime not to go and walk up mountains and go on the lakes that are there. So we just use those activities as a vehicle for teamwork, really. And they're known, they're tried and tested ways of helping us form those sort of relationships. So, but like I say, the cooking in the evening is just as important, really. So we have a great success rate. About 87% of those people that start our programs continue to the end and graduate. And then the majority of those progress back into what we would consider to be a normal education process, so into further education and colleges and stuff. So that's the way we do it. So those individuals are now engaged, hopefully. We do measure that 3 months after our program's finished, and more than 70% of them are still continuing with that progression into that process. So I'm sure society benefits from that, but the young people definitely do, because a lot of our outcomes are employment or further education and training.